I am 80 years old, and for most of my life I was the woman who was fine, always fine. Ask me how I was doing, and I would smile and say, fine, just fine, and mean none of it. And nobody ever pushed back, because fine is the answer that ends the conversation. And ending the conversation was exactly what I needed. I was fine when my marriage was falling apart. I was fine when my mother died, and I did not cry at the funeral because I was holding everyone else together. I was fine when I was so exhausted I could barely get out of bed, and so lonely I talked to the television just to hear another voice in the room. Fine, always fine, and it nearly finished me. I am not fine anymore. I mean that as a victory. I spent 60 years performing okayness for an audience that never asked for the performance. And what I lost in those 60 years, the real connections I could have had, the help I could have accepted, the truth I could have spoken and been loved anyway. That loss is something I carry with me every single day at 80 years old. Not with bitterness, with a very clear and specific wish that I had stopped pretending sooner, much sooner, and with an urgency to tell you, wherever you are and whatever you are carrying right now that you are calling fine, that you do not have to wait as long as I did. I grew up in a home where feelings were private things. You did not burden other people. You did not air your difficulties. You kept yourself together because keeping yourself together was what strong women did, and being a strong woman was the highest compliment anyone could pay you. My mother was strong. Her mother was strong. The whole line of women I came from had built their strength on the careful suppression of anything that might inconvenience the people around them. And I inherited that completely. I wore it like a second skin for so long that I stopped being able to feel the difference between genuine calm and performed calm. They felt identical from the inside. That is how deep it went. I want to tell you about the moment it cracked. Not broke, cracked. There is a difference, and the difference matters. It was a Tuesday evening in the spring of 1987. I was 41 years old. My husband had been distant for months, in a way I had been explaining away to myself with increasing creativity. The children were 12 and 9 and needed things from me constantly in the way that children that age do, relentlessly and without apology, which is exactly right, but also exactly exhausting. I had been awake since 5 that morning. I had worked a full day. I had cooked dinner and helped with homework and done 2 loads of laundry and smiled through all of it. And at 9:30 at night, I sat down on the edge of the bathtub after everyone was in bed, and I looked at my face in the mirror across from me, and I did not recognize what I saw. Not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, arriving way. Like looking at a photograph of someone who used to live in your house. I sat there for a long time, and for the first time in longer than I could account for, I did not tell myself I was fine. I just let myself not be fine. In the bathroom, alone, with nobody to hold it together for, I let it be true, all of it. The exhaustion and the fear and the loneliness and the grief I had been carrying about my marriage that I had not named even to myself, because naming it would have made it real. I just sat with it. And something happened in that sitting that I do not have perfect words for even now. Something loosened, not fixed, not resolved, just loosened, the way a fist slowly opens when you finally stop needing to hold it closed. I told no one about that night for almost 2 years. I still was not ready for anyone else to know. But something had shifted inside me that could not be shifted back. I had seen myself clearly for the first time, and the seeing, even in private, even alone on the edge of a bathtub, had changed the direction of things. Now, if you are watching this, and something in what I just said is sitting in your chest in a particular way, I want you to pause for just a second and notice that feeling. Because that feeling is not an accident. That is recognition. That is the part of you that already knows what I am talking about from the inside. And I want to ask you something simple. When did you last let yourself be something other than fine? Not to another person necessarily, just to yourself, in the quiet. When did you last stop performing for the audience inside your own head? You can leave your answer in the comments below. I mean that genuinely. Tell me when you last let yourself not be fine. Because I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to know your story. You might be surprised how many other people are sitting with something very similar. That is always what surprises me most about this community. How many of us are carrying the same things in the dark, and how much lighter they get the moment someone else names them first. I want to tell you about a woman named Sylvia. Sylvia was my closest friend for 30 years. We met at a parent-teacher evening in 1979 when our daughters were in the same second grade class, and we ended up standing outside the school for 2 hours after the meeting, talking the way you talk when you find someone who is on the same frequency. Sylvia was funny and warm and generous, and she was, if anything, even more committed to the performance of fine than I was. She had a difficult marriage, a truly difficult one. Not mine, which was painful but survivable. Hers was genuinely hard in ways she almost never spoke about directly. And she carried it. For years and years she carried it, with grace and humor and a smile that was so practiced it had become almost real. I noticed things over the years, small things. The way she sometimes went very quiet in the middle of a conversation and then came back with a brightness that was slightly too sharp. The way she always redirected personal questions back to me with such smooth skill that it took me years to realize she was doing it deliberately. The way she talked about the future in a particular vague way, not with anticipation, but with a kind of careful distance, as if the future were a country she was not sure she had a visa for. I did not push. I told myself I was respecting her privacy. I told myself she would come to me when she was ready. I told myself she knew I was there, and all of those things were true, and none of them were the whole truth. The whole truth is that her fine made my fine more comfortable. If Sylvia was holding it together, then we were both holding it together, and neither of us had to be the first one to put it down. She was diagnosed with severe depression at 63. Not a surprise to her doctor, who had been watching the signs for years. A complete surprise to me, who had been sitting across from her at lunch for decades. I sat in her kitchen the day after her diagnosis, and she looked at me and said, "I have been not fine for a very long time, and I did not know how to tell you because you always seemed so fine." We both started crying. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had in 30 years of genuine friendship. And it was 30 years overdue. Sylvia got help, real help, and the last 15 years of our friendship were the most real and close and sustaining years of my life, because the performance was finally over for both of us. She passed 3 years ago, and I miss her every day. But I am grateful that we found our way to the truth before the end. I am grateful we put down the fine. I want to say something to the women watching this, and I especially want to say it to the ones who are in that particular kind of tired that does not come from lack of sleep. It comes from years of holding yourself together for everyone else. I see you. I was you. And I want you to know that the strength you have been performing is real. It is genuinely real. But it is not the only kind of strength available to you. There is another kind. The kind that says, "I am struggling and I need something, and I am going to say that out loud, even though every instinct I have tells me to swallow it." That kind of strength is harder. It is much harder, and it will save your life in ways that the performed kind never can. This channel exists because I believe that the most important things are the ones we have been taught not to say. And if you are here and you are still watching, then I think some part of you believes that too. So I want to ask you to do something. Subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon. Not because I need the numbers. I am 80 years old. I am past needing numbers. But because the conversations we have here are the ones most of us never got to have anywhere else. And if you leave without subscribing, you are going to miss them. Not maybe. You will miss them. And I do not want you to miss them the way I missed 30 years of honest conversation with Sylvia, because we were both too busy being fine. The moment I finally stopped pretending everything was fine did not come all at once. It came in pieces over several years after that Tuesday night on the bathtub edge. It came the first time I told my sister that I was not doing well, and watched her face not fall apart, but instead soften with relief, because she had been waiting to say the same thing. It came the first time I sat in a therapist's office at 53 years old and said out loud things I had never said to another human being, and did not dissolve from the saying of them. It came the first time my daughter, who was grown by then, called me late at night struggling with something, and instead of telling her she would be fine, I said, "I know, it is hard. Tell me more." Each time something released, small amounts, the way a room slowly lightens before sunrise. Not one sudden flood, just gradual and then undeniable. I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually think about it before you read on. What is the one thing you are carrying right now that you have been calling fine? Not to other people necessarily, just in your own head, the thing that gets the fine treatment every time you notice it. The thing you have been managing and explaining and minimizing and carrying very carefully so nobody notices the weight. What is that thing for you right now in your life? Because it has a name. And naming it, even just to yourself, even just here in the quiet of wherever you are watching this, is the beginning of putting it down. I am not telling you to perform your pain for an audience. I am not telling you to make your struggles into content or to share more than you are ready to share. I am telling you that the fine that you have been using as armor is also a cage. And the key is just telling the truth, starting with yourself. Then, when you are ready, with one person who has earned it. I spent 60 years being the woman who had it together, and I will tell you honestly that the years I have lived since I stopped being her have been harder in some ways. When you stop performing fine, you feel things more. The grief comes when it needs to come. The fear announces itself instead of staying politely in the background. You have to actually feel the things you have been not feeling, and that is not comfortable. But the alternative, I know the alternative from the inside. The alternative is a kind of numbness that slowly takes everything warm with it. You stop feeling the bad things, but you also stop fully feeling the good ones. You stop being in pain, but you also stop being in your own life, really in it, present and porous and alive to what is actually happening. I would rather feel everything than feel nothing. I know that now at 80 in a way I did not know it at 40. If this video found you at a moment when you needed it to, when something I said landed somewhere true inside you, I want to know. Tell me in the comments. Tell me what you have been calling fine. Tell me how long you have been carrying it. You do not have to have the answer yet. You do not have to be fixed or healed or on the other side of it. Just tell me the truth of where you are right now. Because this channel is full of people who have been exactly where you are and came out the other side not because they were extraordinary, but because they finally stopped pretending they were fine, and someone, somewhere, saw them clearly for the first time. And it turned out that being seen was most of what they needed. And watch the other videos on this channel. I mean that. Not as a polite suggestion, but as a genuine one from someone who has been having these conversations for years now. The things we talk about here, the things we have been taught to keep quiet, they are not small things. They are the whole thing. They are the texture of a life lived honestly versus a life performed carefully. And every video is another piece of that conversation, and I do not want you to miss any of it. Sylvia used to say that the bravest thing she ever did was finally answer the question honestly. Not an enormous act, not a public declaration, Just one honest answer to, "How are you doing?" said to one person who was ready to hear it. You do not have to be fine today. You just have to be honest about it. That is where everything good starts. I am 80 years old. I am not fine some days, and I have never felt more like myself. That is the whole story. That is everything I came here to say.